Unlock the potential of artificial intelligence. Welcome to Deep Learning and Generative AI.
We're here to break down huge, complex topics into stories that are clear, visual, and easy to wrap your head around.
So, let's just jump right in with the big one. How on earth did we go from a single, squishy brain cell to an artificial intelligence that can create art, write poetry, and basically dream? Well, it's a wild story, and it starts way, way smaller than you might think.
To get there, our journey has to begin with the original blueprint for all of this, the OG computer, the biological neuron.
Okay, so check this out. On the left, you've got the real deal, a biological neuron. It's got dendrites to receive signals, a cell body to process them, and an axon to fire off a response. Now, on the right is our version of that, the artificial neuron. It's really just a beautiful, simplified mathematical model. Instead of dendrites, we have numerical inputs, and the strength of a synapse, we call that a weight. The neuron just adds up all these weighted inputs, and if it hits a certain level, bam, it fires and sends out its own number. It's like we built a Lego version of a brain cell. This brings us to the granddaddy of them all, the McCulloch-Pitts neuron from way back in 1943. You can think of it as a simple binary switch. It's either on or it's off, a 1 or a 0. By manually, hand-tuning the weights and the threshold, the creators proved that this little thing could act like a basic logic gate. Want an AND gate? Just set the threshold so high that it only fires when all the inputs are on. This was a massive first step, proving that simple units like this could actually compute something. But, and this is a big but, this first model had a huge flaw. It was totally rigid. It couldn't learn a thing on its own. You had to set all the weights by hand. And that meant it was completely stumped by any problem where you couldn't just draw a single straight line to separate the yeses from the nos. This was a major roadblock.
So naturally, the next big challenge was to build a neuron that could actually teach itself. This led to a pretty incredible breakthrough and, well, a very surprising dead end. And then, in 1958, along comes the Perceptron. This was a huge leap forward. Frank Rosenblatt designed a neuron that could learn, and the learning rule was so simple it's brilliant. You show it an example, and if it gets it wrong, you just nudge the weights a tiny bit in the right direction. That's it. And this simple idea was so powerful that it was mathematically guaranteed to solve any problem that, well, could be solved by drawing a straight line. But here we go again. The Perceptron slammed right into that same wall with a deceptively simple logic problem called XOR, or exclusive OR. The rule is the output is 1 only if one input is 1, but not both. Now, if you plot those points out, you can see the problem right away. The 1s and 0s are on opposite corners. Go ahead, try to draw one single straight line to separate them. Yeah, you can't do it. It's impossible. This failure was a huge deal, famously analyzed by Minsky and Poppert in 1969. They showed that a single neuron just wasn't enough. And this critique was so devastating that it helped kick off the very first AI winter, a time when funding dried up and people kind of lost faith in the whole idea. So, how did we get out of that AI winter? Well, the solution wasn't a better neuron, it was something else entirely. And this is how we start building the massive networks we have today. Turns out, the answer was to stop thinking about one neuron at a time and start thinking in layers. By stacking neurons on top of each other, you create a multi-layer perceptron. The first layer of neurons could learn to draw one line, the second could draw another, and the output layer could then learn to combine those lines to carve out the exact shape you need to solve a tricky problem like XOR. Okay, but hold on a second, there's a catch. If all you do is stack these linear calculations on top of each other, the math just collapses. The whole stack just becomes one big, flat, linear function again, and you're no better off than you were with a single neuron. So, there has to be a secret ingredient, a special twist that makes all these layers actually work. And here it is. The secret ingredient is the nonlinear activation function. It's a little bit of math that gets applied after each neuron does its summing. This is the crucial step that breaks the chain of linearity. It's what allows the network to bend and twist, to learn complex, curved patterns instead of just straight lines. This is what gives deep learning its power. In the early days, everyone used the sigmoid function. And it makes sense. It's this nice little S-shaped curve that squishes any number down to a value between 0 and 1.
perfect for things like probabilities, right? But it had a fatal flaw. Look at the ends of the S, they're almost flat. In those areas, the learning signal, the gradient, becomes almost zero, so learning just grinds to a halt. This is the famous vanishing gradient problem.
So then people moved on to tan-H. It's basically the same S shape, but it goes from -1 to 1 instead. That zero-centered output was a nice little improvement that helps networks learn a bit faster. But fundamentally, it had the exact same problem. The ends get flat and the gradients still vanish. A step in the right direction, but not the final answer.
And then came ReLU, the rectified linear unit. And this thing was a total game changer. The function is so simple it's almost funny. If a number is positive, you keep it. If it's negative, it's zero. That's it. But the magic is on the positive side. It's a perfectly straight line that never flattens out and never saturates. The learning signal stays strong, which allowed training to be dramatically faster and made truly deep networks finally possible.
So here's the showdown. Sigmoid and tan, they both get crippled by vanishing gradients. ReLU comes in and solves that, but it introduces its own little quirk called dying neurons, where a neuron can just get stuck on zero forever. But even with that small issue, the massive speed up it provides meant ReLU became the king, and it's still the default choice for most networks today.
So now we have all the pieces of the puzzle. We have layers of neurons, and we have these nonlinear activation functions. With this architecture, we can finally understand the absolutely incredible power these networks really hold. This leads us to something that sounds like it's out of science fiction, the universal approximation theorem. This is a mind-blowing piece of math. It basically guarantees that a neural network with just one hidden layer is powerful enough to approximate any continuous function you can imagine. It doesn't say it'll be easy to train or how many neurons you might need, but it proves, in theory, that the power is there.
So how does that even work? Well, you can kind of think of it like this. Each neuron in that hidden layer learns to create one very simple shape, like a little bump or a kink. Then the next neuron adds another bump somewhere else. And the final output layer just learns how to add all these simple little bumps together in just the right way to build up and trace out any super complex curve you want. It's like you're sculpting with mathematical clay. Okay, that's amazing. The network has the power. But to learn anything useful at all, it needs a scorecard. It needs a way to know how wrong it is so it can get better. And that's where loss functions come into play.
And we use different scorecards for different jobs. If you're predicting a number, like the price of a house, that's called regression, you might use something like mean squared error. It really punishes big misses. But if you're picking a category, like is this a cat or a dog, that's classification, you use cross-entropy. This one punishes the model most when it's not just wrong, but confidently wrong. Each one provides the perfect feedback for the task at hand.
And that brings us to this final, really critical point. It's one thing to know that your model can theoretically represent any function. It's a completely different challenge to actually guide it to find the right one.
So we can build this incredibly powerful network, and we can measure its mistakes with a loss function. But how does that error score, that single number, actually tell the millions of weights inside the network how to change to do a better job next time? How does the learning actually happen? Well, that is the real magic. We've built the car and we've given it a map. In our next explainer, we'll talk about the engine that actually drives it, backpropagation.